Hi everyone, it's Nadine. So you may notice that my background is different today. Today's the first day that I've been able to venture back into my office in quite a while, and it was definitely kind of weird coming into work today. I wanted to do this session because I know that in our school district anyway, we are winding down with our school year. Our students ended their e-learning last Friday. And so now a lot of our teachers are in their classrooms and they're packing up. A lot of mixed emotions today, of course. So if you're from my district and you're watching this, I know a lot of you guys are busy. So if you're watching it after the fact, that there's nothing wrong with that. You guys can always have access to the replay anytime on YouTube. So the reason why I wanted to do this session was because since I knew that we were going to be winding down, I knew that people would start asking, what are some things that I could be doing over the summer to try to get myself prepared, possibly for next school year, since, of course, in Indiana, we don't even know what that's going to look like until after July 1st. So I wanted to be able to give you guys a sense of something that you could take a look at and kind of mull through over the summer. Some people have also asked me if I'm still going to be offering this over the summer. I am. It's not going to be as rigorous. It's not going to be like 5 or 6 sessions a day or, on every Monday. But I do want to try to provide a couple of sessions a week. I'm trying to build up enough content so that way you guys can go and you can take a look at any of these resources all summer long. All right. I have a link to the resources. Oh, and I see that Susie's in here. Hi, Susie. If there's anybody else that's joining live, if you guys want to type in who you are, where you teach, and what you teach. I'm going to be toggling back and forth between tabs, but I'll do my best to take a look at the chat if you guys have any questions. And this one is a perfect session if you guys have any questions for me. So as I said, I put the link to the resources that I'm going to go over. They're over in the comments if you want to take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And we will get started. All right. So this is the link to the presentation. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to kind of talk to you about different levels of e-learning. And I have decided to use a chart like this in my district quite a bit. If you don't remember, in my district, we actually use Google Classroom K through 5, and then grades 6 through 12, we are using Canvas. So I actually have a levels sheet that I also developed for Canvas users. And if that's something that you want, feel free to let me know. But what I wanted teachers to realize was that if people asked, they would say, well, I'm already doing e-learning, but I'm not sure what level that it is. I apologize. I have like a tickle in my throat. If they're asking what level that they are at e-learning, I wanted to be able to provide my teachers some sense of a resource. So typically when I would go into a classroom and I would help out a teacher, they would be like, oh, I'm good on Google Classroom or I'm good on Canvas. But then when I would lay out a chart like this, it would help them get like an overall sense. Sorry. It would help them get an overall sense of where they are. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over these different levels. So I always feel like that what I see with teachers, if they're not as tech savvy, is that they're at this level 1. And really, if you're watching this today, you can kind of take a look at what types of e-learning activities did you design over this COVID time and see where they would fall on these levels of integration. So level 1 is simply you're just putting a link to something. So in Google Classroom, that's that you're creating a topic and maybe you're adding links to external sites. Again, in Canvas, it's just merely you saying, here's a link, go to it. So if you're doing that and that's what you're using it for, then that would be considered a level 1. Okay. And maybe it is that you're having the students read an article and do something like that. But again, that's the lowest level. And I do want to preface this, that whenever I talk about these different levels, I'm not trying to say, oh, that's bad. If you see on the side there, I'm kind of referring this to really kind of like SAMR. And I want people to realize that you should have a mix. Nobody's saying that you should have one and only that option. I'm just trying to show you the different levels when we start to talk about teacher voice and choice and student voice and choice. This is where this is going to kind of ratchet up. Okay, so that would be that level 1. Level 2, so rather than just putting a link in there, the teacher is going to utilize digital and maybe traditional text. So maybe they went out to a site like ReadWorks or another digital site. Maybe they already have a PDF of something. So they're coming up with an assignment and they have a text in some shape or form. But then the teacher also attaches a graphic organizer or some type of web tool. So when we use a graphic organizer, that's better than just having simply a link in there. So I always point out to my teachers that there's all kinds of graphic organizers. I did not add a link to this other PD that I have, but I'll do it after the fact. In our district, and this was a couple years ago when we were trying to get teachers ready for e-learning, we had an expectation at that time that we wanted teachers to be able to use Google Classroom, for example, on a weekly basis. So if I knew that was coming down the pike, I wanted my teachers to always be prepared. So I came out and I did professional development on ideas for using Google Classroom on a weekly basis. And part of that was, we led into different ways to use graphic organizers. And I had a group of district folks that came in and I said, I want to make this easier for teachers. So what I wanted to do was have us create a resource bank of different graphic organizers. So I'll definitely put the links to these in here. So in other words, if you're K-2, we compiled different graphic organizers that we found online. And there is a site that we came across that had a bunch of graphic organizers that were in here. Okay. And then I also have this broken down into 3 through 5 as well. So if you're looking for those things, then you can find that in here as well. Now, I didn't want teachers to feel bad, but if somebody's like, oh, does this mean I have to make it myself? I always like to have some kind of an icon to help people out so that they understand, where am I at? So I said, look, if you have no battery, it means that you're someone that you're not willing to attach a graphic organizer at all. You're like, no, I'm just going to put the link and then I'm just going to slap some questions and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm trying to get people to realize I don't want you to be at no battery, but I'm trying to help you out so you can at least be at the low to medium battery. So you're able to find a template and you can attach it into either your LMS or into Google Classroom. Somebody who's at that high level of a battery means that they create some of their own graphic organizers, or they divide and conquer and they work with their team to create graphic organizers. So again, I always tell people, don't feel like that you got to start from scratch. You can definitely go in and you can work with people to add these. All right. So I'm going to go back over to here and you're going to notice that I have on here, Ditch That Textbook. So I know Matt Miller just came out with a new book and it was, it's Tech Like a Pirate. And in both of those instances, Matt is really good about talking about using a graphic organizer, and he's already created a lot of graphic organizers. So don't feel like that you need to make it. You can go in there and find it yourself. If there's other places that have graphic organizers, then I'm trying to give teachers some suggestions in here. By no means am I saying that you have to do it all on your own. Okay? If you are wanting to make it on your own, I have an icon for Google Drawings. I have a whole nother PD session that I've already done on getting going with Google Drawings. And I went through step by step how you could create your own. So you may want to take a look at that. This session is merely just me trying to give you an idea of where your lessons might fall. So phase 3, the difference between phase 2 and that level 3 is going to be you're not just doing a digital worksheet. So, and that's always my biggest goal is I usually get teachers that are at a 1 or 2 and they're not sure what they need to do to get to that level 3. So what level 3 does is it actually does take that additional step that it's going to go beyond a digital worksheet. So this is where you're going to have multimedia included, and there's going to be some type of student choice and voice is going to be present in there as well. Flipgrid. So I had a lot of teachers that were incorporating Flipgrid, and so that was nice for me to be able to say to them, okay, if you used Flipgrid, then it's going to fall under that third level because you just went beyond just saying here's a link to something. Seesaw is another great example. And some of you might be thinking, well, I mean, like our primary grades use Seesaw, but we use Google Classroom or Canvas. And I always tell people Seesaw is a perfect tool that you can use with any LMS, with Google Classroom, with any of those things. The reason why that I love Seesaw so much is that it's a one-stop shop. And rather than me having to teach you how to use 5 different apps to accomplish the same thing, it has a lot of layers built in with it. And Flipgrid keeps beefing up all of their options, and Flipgrid is the same way as well. So as I'm moving up this scale here, you notice that I went from just the student consuming to then they're starting to get into some light creation, if you're having them record a video back to you using Flipgrid or something with Seesaw. But then always at the top here at a level 4, that's where I try to get my teachers to discover and learn more about HyperDocs. Because what I like about HyperDocs is that it is weaving in all of these levels all into one package. And so that really helps people. If you don't know what a HyperDoc is, I did a session with Canvas users that was all about how to get started using HyperDocs in Canvas. And I also have done a session on Intro to HyperDocs. Both of those are on my YouTube channel, so you can take a look at that. So again, this e-learning levels of integration has been very helpful for my teachers so that I know some of them have even printed it out so that way, as they're taking a look at their lessons, then they can easily see where they fall. And I always tell teachers, like this year, that year, whenever I brought out these different levels, I said, there's nothing wrong with phase 1. But if you stay at phase 1 or level 1 the entire year, then yes, that's only a starting point. You're supposed to ratchet things up. And someone who's in my position, if you're not in my district, then, a lot of districts do have someone in my position. That's when you lean on that person to help you come up with those ideas. Okay. Now, a couple of other resources that I wanted to share also to get you thinking about summer. Right at the beginning of COVID, Lisa Highfill, one of the authors of HyperDocs, she and I were asked to do a webinar for CETA. And I love the fact that Lisa Highfill was able to share this graphic that she found on Twitter. And it's awesome. And I'm already working on a way to get my teachers to understand, these stages where it matches up more with what we do. So this is from someone who had been doing distance learning for several weeks overseas, and they began to realize that there were different stages. So kind of like how I have my levels, this is where you as a teacher can also decide, everybody was in the survival mode in the beginning. And then we started to transition into that strive. And then how do we turn into thrive or arrive? And honestly, this is an ongoing process. And that's why over the summer, I want to try to work on What are other supplemental resources that I can create for our teachers? What other online PD can I provide to help people feel even more confident about moving into, a more of a blended learning environment, which a lot of us tech integrators have talked about before, but now people are realizing that we really need to pay attention to the pedagogy that goes behind that. So that's what we're here for. We're here to help you. And I want you to know that I'm here to help you in big ways. And it doesn't have to be that you're here live. You can always go back and watch it later. So one of the things that I've started to do already is come up with some type of a checklist. So when people are trying to think of how can I get things ready for e-learning, this will actually link out to a document where it says e-learning checklist. And I already have that open. If you want to click on that, I want to make sure I have it clicked, that I have it linked correctly. Let me make sure here that I got the right one. Okay, good. All right, so on this checklist, this is another item that I could see people printing out, and as they were starting to think about their e-learning lessons, which again, I know we're winding down in the school year, but I know teachers, and I always worked on what can I easily pace myself and remix, reorganize, rethink over the summer. And this is where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. If you start looking at what am I going to teach that first 9 weeks when I get back, I can start to develop it, build in those digital components. So that way I'm prepared either way. It's definitely good resources that I can use even if I am live in the classroom. But if I'm not, I'm going ahead and I'm taking a look at what are some things that I can consider. So I always remind our folks about reasonable amount of work. So if it was going to be totally, e-learning, especially when I get into the secondary, I always talk to people about, is it legit the amount of work that you're asking a student to do? Because you have to think beyond just your class. You have to think about if they have 6 or 7 other teachers and what that workload is going to look like for a student. Just be reasonable with what you're expecting a student to do. The navigation to the lesson. Did you make it easy for them? And again, if we're thinking elementary, is it easy for them and a parent to locate what e-learning it is that you want them to do? Is it easy to find? And I'm all big about least amount of clicks. It should take the least amount of clicks for you to get that person to that location. Okay. Are the students confident in using that template? So I'm big on using a template in our elementary. We have a template that we use for our e-learning. At the secondary level, we have a template in Canvas that we ask our teachers to use to build in as well. And the benefits of that for us at a district level are that it's going to be common and it's not like we're trying to surprise someone. So take a look, and when I say students are confident in using the template, I know we got thrown into this, but if you can think about this summer and how you can kind of rework that. I know some people have said to me, man, I realize now why I need to be using that platform before we get into a situation like this. And I'm glad that people are realizing that so that way they know this is what is important right now. Okay. If you're in the classroom live with students, have some interaction with that template because you can have them understand how to use it really easily. Are your instructions clear? Now, this is a big one. And I know a lot of us as tech integrators talk about you have got to have a teacher voice and a face that if you just have on there the typed out directions, a lot of research has shown that a student is going to understand clear and a parent is going to understand clearly what is it that I'm supposed to do. If you add voice at least, but if you add voice and your face, then you are going to be a lot more successful. Now, I linked in here an example, and this was from, I think, a year or two ago. It was one of our secondary teachers, and we were just getting ready to try doing e-learning for inclement weather. And I asked my teachers, hey, did anybody do audio or video to give your directions? And I had a teacher send me one, and it was really good because she walked them through, here's how you find your assignment. She walked them through it. Here's exactly what you're going to do. So you can take a look at that example if you want. So you need to take a look at your work content. What are you asking the students to do? Is it going to be all digital? Is it going to be paper? Is it going to be both? So when you're designing a lesson, you need to take a look at those components. Now, on no assessments given, we have to make sure that we are aligning with IEP and 504 goals. So in other words, if it is an assessment, we can't have an assessment that's part of that e-learning unless that student is going to get the support that they need, because that is a legally binding document. Okay, so I always want to make sure that people are check marking that they know that. Make sure that your lesson doesn't have materials that you need from home, because you may have it in your house, but somebody else may not have it. So I always want to remind teachers of that. Now in Indiana, we use our Indiana state standards, but if you're watching this and you're outside of Indiana, check mark that you aligned it to your standards, so you can put a quick check on that. What category did your lesson components fall under? And again, that goes back to this chart again. So when I say, is it going to be just straight up consumption, or is it going to have creation? That's when you're going back and you're taking a look at this. And you're kind of asking yourself, where does that fall? Okay. Are student voice and choice present? I wanted to go ahead and add that in there again, because I wanted to make sure that people had that included. Because again, if it's just straight up type in your answer every single time that you plan a lesson, then you're going to notice a pattern. And that kind of leads me to, I knew I threw it at the bottom. I was trying to get some updates on this doc added in here. So I'll probably rework this a little bit. But, what are you doing to provide that engagement and hook? And the students are going to be hooked if you have your face and your voice in there, and then vice versa. What are you doing to include them in there as well? Now, this one's a biggie. Asynchronous learning is embedded. You notice I didn't put live learning is embedded. I can't stress enough that having asynchronous learning embedded, and that means that the teacher is recording a piece of the lesson that they want the student, like if you have a overall big chunk that you want them to make sure that they learn, you've got to have asynchronous learning embedded in here. If you don't have that component and you're just strictly going on live, you don't know if every student can join during that time. And there's a lot of technical difficulties that happen when you're trying to record a live session. Also, the video quality may not be as well as what you are wanting. Okay. So I just want to make sure that, that you guys understand those components. If you are straight up Google Classroom and you want some ideas, this is actually, if you scroll down this ideas checklist, I have it listed on here too. I was talking to you about what was it that we were asking people to do with Google Classroom, and I had it, basic, ask a question, attach something, link it. You can put some check marks in here, but also notice that I put in some areas to reflect. So, but I ended up combining both of these documents so that way you wouldn't have two separate links. But when we're thinking about this, I always get people all the time that would say, well, I'm techie. And I love this quote from Alice Keeler. The only difference between you being techie and not techie is, are you willing to click on stuff and just see what happens? Nobody's expecting anybody to be perfect here. And I know that, again, a lot of us are winding down for the school year, but I want you to obviously take a deep breath. Nobody's telling you to work on anything right now, but as you venture into summer, come back to these resources and take a look at what you could be doing. Take a look at some of the other videos that I have in here as well. I'm going to go back and stop sharing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I see some folks that are in here. And, you know, if you guys have any questions for me, you can reach out to me on Twitter. You can email me. It's just nadine.gilkison@ftcsc.org. I just want people to feel reassured that the last thing I want is for people to feel like that they're in a state of panic, that we're going out of this, we're going into summer, and as summer starts to wind down, I want people to know that these are easy resources that you can go back and take a look. And I know there's tons of information that's online right now. There's a lot of Facebook groups, but I feel like people can get overwhelmed. So if you want to take a look at the resources that I have compiled, that's fine. And if you have any questions, I'll stay on for a few more minutes. And if you're watching this in the replay, as soon as I end the broadcast, I'll make sure that I go in and edit so that I can add the links to these resources as well. It says, are you sharing the grade level resource ID? Oh, yes. Let me put that in here. Actually, I'm going to add these two slides. I'm going to add these two slides into the Thinking About Summer. I'll just do that. Okay. So I just tossed in the graphic organizers and the templates into the Thinking About Summer. So that way it's all in one document and you guys don't have a lot of different links to try to take a look at. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off of here. I have some great guests today. If you're able to stick around later, if not, watch it on the replay. And I will talk to you all later.